A peaceful coastal town faces a devastating storm, separating a 7-year-old girl from her parents. Seeing the critical situation, her loyal dog embarks on an impossible rescue mission. The dog is now racing against time, facing furious waters and mortal dangers before the worst happens. What he discovers left everyone in shock. In the quaint coastal town of Seaside Cove, nestled along the rugged shores of Maine, life moved at a gentle pace. Picturesque Victorian houses lined the winding streets, their weathered shingles telling tales of countless storms weathered. The salty air carried the distant cries of seagulls and the rhythmic lapping of waves against the rocky shore. 7-year-old Emily lived with her parents in a cozy blue cottage just a stone's throw from the beach. Their home, like many others in Seaside Cove, had stood strong against the elements for generations. Emily's days were filled with the simple joys of small-town life, collecting seashells, chasing her loyal golden retriever Max along the shore, and helping her father, a local fisherman, mend his nets. The town prided itself on its close-knit community, where neighbors knew each other by name and looked out for one another. The local diner, run by the ever-cheerful Mrs. Thompson, was a hub of activity, serving up clam chowder that was rumored to be the best in all of New England. However, the tranquility of Seaside Cove was about to be shattered. As the calendar turned to late August, an ominous stillness settled over the town. The usually bustling harbor fell quiet as fishermen hurriedly secured their boats. Shopkeepers boarded up windows, and families stocked up on supplies. The local weather station had issued a severe storm warning, but no one could have predicted the true ferocity of what was to come. As the sky darkened to an eerie shade of green, the first raindrops began to fall, marking the beginning of a night that would change Seaside Cove forever. At the heart of this unfolding drama was Emily Anderson, a bright-eyed 7-year-old with a mop of unruly red curls and a smattering of freckles across her nose. Emily was known throughout Seaside Cove for her infectious laugh and boundless curiosity. She could often be found exploring tide pools, her green Wellington boots splashing in the shallow water as she searched for fascinating sea creatures. Emily's constant companion was Max, a 4-year-old golden retriever with a heart as big as his appetite. Max's honey-colored coat was often matted with sand and seawater, evidence of his daily adventures with Emily. His brown eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost human, and his unwavering loyalty to Emily was the stuff of local legend. Emily's parents, Sarah and Tom Anderson, were pillars of the Seaside Cove community. Sarah, a dedicated elementary school teacher, had a gentle demeanor that put even the most anxious child at ease. Her patience and kindness were reflected in Emily's own compassionate nature. Tom, a third-generation fisherman, was as sturdy and dependable as the lighthouse that stood guard over the harbor. His weathered hands and sun-creased face told the story of countless hours spent at sea, providing for his family and community. The Andersons' next-door neighbor, Mrs. Abigail Green, was a retired marine biologist in her 70s. With her silver hair always neatly pinned up and a pair of binoculars perpetually hanging around her neck, Mrs. Green had become a surrogate grandmother to Emily. Mrs. Green's passion for marine life had sparked Emily's own fascination with the ocean, and the two often spent afternoons identifying various seashells and discussing the habits of local wildlife. Her wisdom and calm demeanor would prove invaluable in the coming crisis. Another key figure in Seaside Cove was Chief Michael Sullivan, head of the local police force and volunteer fire department. A burly man with a thick mustache and kind eyes, Chief Sullivan took his responsibility to protect the town very seriously. His booming voice and quick thinking had guided the community through many a storm, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. Rounding out the cast of characters was Dr. Laura Chen, the town's dedicated physician. Having moved to Seaside Cove from bustling Boston 5 years ago, Dr. Chen had quickly become an integral part of the community. Her steady hands and cool head under pressure would be put to the ultimate test in the hours to come. As the storm clouds gathered, each of these individuals went about their routines, unaware of how their lives would soon be intertwined in a dramatic tale of survival and heroism. Emily helped her mother prepare dinner, while Max dozed contentedly at her feet. Tom hurried to secure his fishing boat, exchanging worried glances with fellow fishermen at the docks. Mrs. Green peered anxiously at the darkening sky through her binoculars, while Chief Sullivan began coordinating with his team, preparing for what they hoped would be just another summer squall. As night fell, the storm hit with a fury that caught even the most prepared residents off guard. Rain lashed against windows in horizontal sheets, driven by howling winds that seemed to shake the very foundations of Seaside Cove. The usually placid ocean churned violently, waves crashing over the seawall and flooding the lower streets with alarming speed. In the Anderson household, the family huddled together in the living room, listening to the emergency broadcast on their battery-powered radio. Suddenly, a deafening crack pierced the air as a massive oak tree in their backyard succumbed to the gale, crashing through the roof and allowing torrents of water to pour in. "We need to evacuate now," Tom shouted over the din, grabbing Emily's hand. Sarah quickly stuffed some essentials into a waterproof bag, while Emily called for Max, who was barking frantically at the chaos. As they stumbled out into the tempest, the floodwaters were already knee-deep. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance, barely audible over the storm's roar. In the confusion and darkness, a sudden surge of water swept through the street. Emily's hand slipped from her father's grasp, and in an instant she was torn away from her family, carried off by the ruthless current. As the floodwaters surged through Seaside Cove, each character's true nature emerged in the face of crisis. Emily, swept away from her parents, found herself fighting against the current with a strength she didn't know she possessed. Despite her terror, the young girl's innate resourcefulness kicked in. She remembered her father's lessons about staying afloat and managed to grab onto a floating piece of driftwood, using it to keep her head above water. Meanwhile, Tom and Sarah were frantic with worry. Tom's years of experience on the sea had taught him to respect the water's power, but nothing could have prepared him for the gut-wrenching fear of losing his daughter to the flood. His usual calm demeanor cracked as he shouted Emily's name into the howling wind, his voice breaking with desperation. Sarah, typically the voice of reason in the family, found herself paralyzed with fear. Her mind raced with worst-case scenarios, but she forced herself to focus. Drawing on the patience and problem-solving skills she used daily in her classroom, she began to think strategically about where the current might have taken Emily. Max, separated from Emily in the chaos, showcased a determination that went beyond mere animal instinct. The loyal dog fought against the current, his powerful legs propelling him through the turbulent waters. His acute senses, heightened by adrenaline, picked up Emily's scent despite the rain and wind. With unwavering focus, he followed the faint trail, barking loudly to signal his location to any nearby rescuers. Back at her house, Mrs. Green found her scientific mind to be a valuable asset. As the waters rose around her home, she calmly assessed the situation, using her knowledge of local topography to predict the flood's path. She quickly gathered supplies and made her way to her attic, all while formulating a plan to assist in rescue efforts once the immediate danger had passed. Chief Sullivan found himself facing the greatest challenge of his career. As the floodwaters rose, he drew upon years of emergency training and his deep knowledge of the town's layout. His normally jovial demeanor was replaced by a laser-focused intensity as he coordinated rescue efforts, dispatching teams to the most vulnerable areas and setting up a makeshift command center in the town hall, which sat on higher ground. The chief's quick thinking saved countless lives that night, but he was haunted by the knowledge that some residents, like young Emily, were still unaccounted for. Every decision weighed heavily on him, knowing that each choice could mean life or death for his neighbors and friends. Dr. Chen's medical training kicked into high gear as the first injured residents began to arrive at the makeshift shelter in the high school gymnasium. With limited supplies and challenging conditions, she worked tirelessly, treating everything from minor cuts to hypothermia. Her calm demeanor and reassuring words helped keep panic at bay among the evacuees, even as she grappled with her own fears for the safety of those still out in the storm. As the night wore on, the characters' paths began to intersect in unexpected ways. Sarah and Tom, in their desperate search for Emily, crossed paths with Chief Sullivan. The chief, moved by their plight and remembering Emily's bright smile from community events, personally joined the search efforts, pushing himself to the limit. Mrs. Green, from her vantage point in the attic, used her binoculars to scan the floodwaters. Her keen eye spotted Max in the distance, recognizing his distinctive golden coat. She immediately used her emergency radio to alert the rescue teams, providing them with a potential lead on Emily's location. Throughout the ordeal, each character discovered reserves of strength, courage, and resourcefulness they never knew they possessed. The crisis stripped away their everyday personas, revealing the core of who they truly were and forging connections that would last long after the waters receded. As the night progressed, the challenges facing Seaside Cove's residents grew increasingly dire. The relentless rain and wind showed no signs of abating, and the floodwaters continued to rise at an alarming rate. The town's infrastructure, despite years of preparation for coastal storms, began to buckle under the unprecedented deluge. For Emily, every moment was a fight for survival. The piece of driftwood she clung to was a lifeline, but it was difficult to maintain her grip as the current tossed her about. The darkness made it impossible to see where she was being carried, and the roar of the storm drowned out any calls for help. Exhaustion began to set in, her small arms aching from the effort of holding on. The cold water sapped her strength, and hypothermia became a very real threat. Tom and Sarah faced their own set of challenges as they searched for their daughter. The floodwaters made many streets impassable, forcing them to wade through dangerous currents that threatened to sweep them off their feet. Debris carried by the water, branches, parts of buildings, and even cars created a treacherous obstacle course. Every minute that passed increased their fear for Emily's safety, testing their emotional resilience to its limits. Max, driven by his unwavering loyalty to Emily, battled against the elements. The strong currents threatened to overwhelm even his powerful swimming abilities. He had to navigate through a maze of submerged obstacles, risking injury with each collision. His keen senses, usually an asset, were overwhelmed by the chaos of the storm, making it increasingly difficult to track Emily's scent. Chief Sullivan grappled with the logistical nightmare of coordinating rescue efforts across the devastated town. Communication systems were down, making it nearly impossible to maintain contact with his rescue teams. The limited number of boats and trained personnel meant he had to make agonizing decisions about which areas to prioritize, knowing that these choices could mean life or death for those waiting to be rescued. At the shelter, Dr. Chen faced a rapidly dwindling supply of medical resources. The number of injured residents continued to grow, and she had to make difficult triage decisions. The lack of electricity forced her to work by battery-powered lanterns, complicating even simple medical procedures. Additionally, the rising water levels threatened to flood even this supposedly safe location, raising the possibility of another evacuation. Mrs. Green, although safe in her attic, wrestled with feelings of helplessness. Her attempts to contact emergency services were met with busy signals or silence. She could see the devastation unfolding around her, but was unable to offer direct assistance. The uncertainty of her neighbors' fates, especially young Emily's, weighed heavily on her mind. As the storm raged on, new challenges emerged that tested the resilience of Seaside Cove and its inhabitants. The town's storm drainage system, overwhelmed by the unprecedented rainfall, began to back up. This caused water to gush from storm drains and manholes, creating dangerous whirlpools in the streets that threatened to drag people under. The fire department, already stretched thin, now had to contend with electrical fires sparked by short circuits in flooded buildings. Emily's situation grew increasingly perilous. The current had carried her to the outskirts of town, where the floodwaters merged with the churning sea. She found herself being pulled towards the open ocean, the distant lighthouse beam offering brief, tantalizing glimpses of land that seemed impossibly far away. Her strength was fading fast, her fingers numb from cold and barely able to maintain their grip on the driftwood. Tom and Sarah's search became a race against time. They knew that with each passing minute, the chances of finding Emily alive diminished. The couple was forced to make a heart-wrenching decision, split up to cover more ground, knowing that doing so could put them both at greater risk. They were also battling their own physical limitations, the cold and exhaustion threatening to overcome their determination. Max, in his tireless pursuit of Emily, faced a new danger. The floodwaters had disturbed a nest of aggressive snapping turtles, which now posed a threat to the swimming dog. His loyal heart drove him forward, but each snap of powerful jaws near his legs was a stark reminder of the peril he faced. Chief Sullivan received devastating news. The backup generator at the town's hospital had failed, leaving critical patients in danger. He now had to divert resources to evacuate the hospital, knowing this would significantly hamper the search for missing residents like Emily. The weight of these decisions, quite literally life and death choices, bore down on him like a physical force. At the shelter, Dr. Chen confronted a new crisis. The floodwaters had contaminated the town's water supply, and cases of waterborne illnesses began to emerge among the evacuees. With limited clean water and medicine, she had to find creative solutions to prevent an outbreak that could be as deadly as the flood itself. Mrs. Green, watching from her attic window, noticed with alarm that the floodwaters were rising faster than before. She realized that the nearby Anderson Creek Dam might be at risk of breaching, which would send a devastating surge of water through the already flooded town. Her scientific mind raced to calculate the potential impact and figure out how to warn others of this new threat. As dawn approached, the people of Seaside Cove found themselves pushed to their absolute limits, each facing challenges that would redefine their understanding of courage, endurance, and community. Emily, despite her young age, showed remarkable presence of mind. Realizing she was being pulled out to sea, she made a split-second decision to abandon her driftwood lifeline and swim towards a partially submerged tree she spotted in the distance. With every ounce of strength left in her small body, she battled against the current, her determination fueled by thoughts of her family and her loyal Max. Upon reaching the tree, she climbed its branches, positioning herself above the swirling waters. Tom and Sarah, having made the difficult choice to separate, coordinated their efforts with military precision. Sarah, drawing on her knowledge of the local area from years of nature, walks with her students, focused her search on the elevated regions where Emily might have sought refuge. Tom, utilizing his seafaring experience, commandeered a small fishing boat and began patrolling the flooded streets, his keen eyes scanning for any sign of his daughter. Max, driven by an almost supernatural bond with Emily, refused to give up despite the dangers. When confronted by the snapping turtles, he displayed unexpected agility, deftly maneuvering around them while maintaining his course. His persistent barking served as a beacon, drawing the attention of nearby rescue teams. Chief Sullivan, faced with the hospital crisis, showcased his leadership skills. He quickly organized a convoy of high-clearance vehicles and volunteers to evacuate critical patients. Simultaneously, he used the town's emergency alert system to broadcast Emily's description and last known location, effectively enlisting the entire community in the search effort. Dr. Chen, confronted with the water contamination crisis, took swift and decisive action. She organized the shelter's inhabitants into teams, assigning them tasks to boil water, distribute bottled supplies, and maintain strict hygiene protocols. Her calm demeanor and clear instructions helped prevent panic and fostered a sense of purpose among the evacuees. She also improvised a makeshift water filtration system using available materials, demonstrating remarkable ingenuity under pressure. Mrs. Green, upon realizing the potential danger of the Anderson Creek Dam, immediately switched into crisis management mode. She used her emergency radio to contact Chief Sullivan, providing a detailed analysis of the potential flood path if the dam were to breach. Her scientific expertise proved invaluable as she suggested strategic locations for emergency sandbag barriers. Despite her age, she insisted on leaving the safety of her attic to help coordinate these efforts, her knowledge of local topography guiding the placement of these crucial defenses. As dawn broke, the community's collective response to the crisis began to bear fruit. Rescue teams, bolstered by volunteer efforts and guided by the strategic coordination of Chief Sullivan and Mrs. Green, made significant headway in reaching stranded residents. The spirit of unity that emerged was a testament to the town's resilience, with neighbors helping neighbors and strangers alike. In a pivotal moment, Max's persistent barking finally paid off. A rescue boat, manned by Tom and a local firefighter, heard the dog's calls over the storm's diminishing roar. Following the sound, they navigated through the debris-filled waters, eventually spotting Max swimming with unwavering determination. Tom's heart raced, hoping against hope that where Max was, Emily wouldn't be far behind. As they followed Max's lead, the first rays of sunlight began to pierce through the clouds, illuminating a scene of devastation, but also of hope. The worst of the storm had passed, but for the residents of Seaside Cove, the most crucial moments of their ordeal still lay ahead. As Tom's rescue boat followed Max's determined path, the tension in Seaside Cove reached its peak. The receding floodwaters revealed a landscape transformed, familiar streets now unrecognizable, littered with debris and abandoned vehicles. The early morning light cast long shadows, creating an eerie, almost post-apocalyptic atmosphere. Tom's heart pounded in his chest as Max's barks grew louder. They were approaching a cluster of partially submerged trees, their branches reaching out of the water like grasping fingers. Suddenly, Max changed direction, swimming with renewed vigor towards a particularly large oak. Tom's relief was short-lived as he realized the precarious nature of Emily's position. The tree she clung to was creaking ominously, its root system weakened by the flood. Any attempt to approach directly with the boat risked toppling the tree, sending Emily plunging into the still dangerous waters. As they cautiously maneuvered closer, a bone-chilling crack split the air. The tree was giving way, tilting slowly but surely towards the water. Emily's terrified scream pierced the morning stillness. "Emily, hold on!" Tom shouted, his voice hoarse with fear and desperation. Without hesitation, he dove into the water, swimming powerfully towards his daughter. The firefighter, anticipating Tom's action, quickly tied a rope around his own waist, anchoring himself to the boat to create a human lifeline. Time seemed to slow as Tom raced against the falling tree. Each stroke felt like an eternity, the distance to Emily impossibly vast. He could see the fear in her eyes, her small hands white-knuckled as they gripped the branch. Tom dove, the murky water stinging his eyes as he searched frantically for his daughter. Seconds stretched into what felt like hours as he groped blindly in the cloudy depths. His lungs burned, demanding air, but he pushed on, driven by pure paternal instinct. Back on the boat, the firefighter reeled them in quickly, his trained eyes assessing the situation. "She's not breathing," Tom choked out, his voice breaking with fear as he laid Emily's limp form on the boat's deck. "Come on, Emily, breathe!" Tom pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper. Max, who had climbed into the boat, whined softly, his wet nose nuzzling Emily's hand. Suddenly, Emily's body jerked and she coughed violently, expelling water from her lungs. Tom's cry of relief was drowned out by the sound of Emily's gasping breaths. She was alive, but not out of danger yet. Upon reaching the shore, they were met by Dr. Chen and a team of volunteers. Emily was quickly whisked away on a stretcher, Tom running alongside, refusing to let go of her hand. The next few hours were a blur of medical jargon and tense waiting as Dr. Chen fought to stabilize Emily's condition. Meanwhile, across town, another crisis was unfolding. The Anderson Creek Dam, weakened by the relentless flood, was showing signs of imminent failure. Chief Sullivan, acting on Mrs. Green's earlier warning, had mobilized every available person to reinforce the dam and evacuate the lower-lying areas. Mrs. Green herself was at the forefront, her knowledge of the local geography proving invaluable as she directed the placement of sandbags and other makeshift barriers. The entire community had come together, forming human chains to pass sandbags, their collective effort a testament to the town's resilience. As the water level rose to a critical point, a low rumble began to emanate from the dam. Cracks appeared in the concrete, growing larger by the second. Chief Sullivan, realizing the imminent danger, gave the order for everyone to retreat to higher ground. Just as the last volunteer scrambled to safety, a thunderous roar filled the air. The dam burst, releasing a torrent of water that crashed through their hastily erected defenses. The flood surged towards the town, threatening to undo all their efforts to save Seaside Cove. Back at the medical center, Emily's condition was finally stabilizing. As color returned to her cheeks, Tom allowed himself a moment of hope. But that hope was short-lived, as the sound of the dam breaking reached them. Dr. Chen looked up in alarm, realizing that their location, while safe from the initial flood, was now in the path of this new deluge. With patients too weak to move and vital medical equipment that couldn't be quickly relocated, they found themselves facing a terrible dilemma. As the roar of the approaching water grew louder, Tom hugged Emily close, unsure if their ordeal was about to begin all over again. As the sound of rushing water grew louder, a sudden realization struck Mrs. Green. Her eyes widened as she quickly pulled out a weathered map of Seaside Cove from her emergency kit. "Chief Sullivan," she called out, her voice cutting through the panic. "There's an old underground drainage system that could save the town." Chief Sullivan rushed over, his brow furrowed with a mix of hope and skepticism. Mrs. Green's trembling finger traced a line on the map, revealing a network of long-forgotten tunnels beneath the town. "These were built during the Prohibition era to smuggle goods," she explained hastily. "If we can open them, they might divert enough water to spare the town center and the medical facility." The chief's eyes lit up with understanding. Without hesitation, he began barking orders into his radio, directing teams to the access points Mrs. Green identified. It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. Meanwhile, at the medical center, Dr. Chen made a startling discovery while treating Emily. The young girl's blood work revealed an unusual antibody that seemed to be fighting off the waterborne illness with remarkable efficiency. This could be the key to developing a rapid treatment for the other affected residents. As Tom watched over Emily, now resting more comfortably, Sarah burst into the room. She had been helping with evacuation efforts when she heard about Emily's rescue. The family's tearful reunion was interrupted by Dr. Chen, who quickly explained her discovery. "Emily's blood could save lives," she said, her eyes shining with a mix of excitement and urgency. "But we need to act fast." Tom and Sarah exchanged a look of surprise and pride. Their daughter, who they had feared losing just hours ago, might now hold the key to saving the entire community. It was a twist of fate that no one could have predicted. As the race to open the underground tunnels intensified, another unexpected development unfolded. Max, who had been by Emily's side since her rescue, suddenly perked up his ears and dashed out of the medical center. Tom, puzzled by the dog's behavior, followed him outside. To everyone's amazement, Max led them to a group of stranded residents who had taken refuge on the roof of a partially submerged building. The loyal dog's keen senses had picked up their distress calls. inaudible to human ears over the roar of the approaching flood. This discovery prompted a swift rescue operation, saving lives that might otherwise have been lost. Back in the town center, the effort to open the old drainage tunnels reached a critical point. Years of disuse had left the access points rusted shut, resisting the rescuers' attempts to open them. As the floodwaters crept ever closer, threatening to overwhelm their defenses, Chief Sullivan made a daring decision. He called for the town's vintage fire truck, a relic from the 1950s that was kept more for nostalgic value than practical use. Its powerful water cannon, designed to fight large industrial fires, might just have enough force to blast open the sealed tunnel entrances. As the antique truck rumbled into position, the entire town held its breath. The success or failure of this desperate plan would determine the fate of Seaside Cove. Chief Sullivan himself took control of the water cannon, aiming it at the first access point. With a thunderous roar, the high-pressure stream hit its target. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan of protesting metal, the old cover began to give way. Suddenly, it burst open, and a powerful vortex formed as floodwater rushed into the underground system. A cheer went up from the crowd as they realized their gamble had paid off. As the old drainage tunnels absorbed the brunt of the flood, the immediate threat to Seaside Cove began to subside. The town, though battered and waterlogged, had been spared from total destruction. The collective sigh of relief was almost palpable as residents realized the worst had passed. At the medical center, Dr. Chen worked tirelessly to develop a treatment using Emily's antibodies. Her efforts paid off as she successfully created a serum that could combat the waterborne illness. With the help of volunteers, she began administering the treatment to affected patients, and the results were nothing short of miraculous. People who had been critically ill just hours before showed remarkable improvement, their recovery a testament to Emily's inadvertent contribution. Meanwhile, the rescue efforts coordinated by Chief Sullivan continued throughout the day. Max's keen senses proved invaluable as he led rescue teams to several more groups of stranded residents. The dog's heroics, combined with the chief's strategic planning, ensured that every person in Seaside Cove was accounted for and brought to safety. As the floodwaters gradually receded, the true extent of the damage became apparent. Many homes and businesses had been destroyed or severely damaged. However, the town's spirit remained unbroken. Even as they surveyed the destruction, residents began to band together, offering shelter, sharing supplies, and making plans for rebuilding. In the days that followed, the people of Seaside Cove demonstrated remarkable resilience and unity. The old drainage tunnels, once a forgotten relic of the town's history, were now hailed as their salvation. Plans were quickly drawn up to renovate and expand the system, ensuring better flood protection for the future. Mrs. Green's knowledge of local history and geography, which had proven crucial during the crisis, inspired a new initiative. The town council decided to create a comprehensive disaster preparedness plan, incorporating not just modern technology, but also historical insights and local wisdom. Emily's recovery progressed steadily, and she soon became a symbol of hope for the community. Her story, along with Max's heroic efforts, captured the hearts of people far beyond Seaside Cove. News of their bravery spread, bringing attention and support to the town's rebuilding efforts. Chief Sullivan, recognizing the invaluable role that Max played in the rescue operations, established a K-9 unit within the local emergency services. This decision not only honored Max's contributions, but also enhanced the town's future disaster response capabilities. As for Tom and Sarah, the ordeal had strengthened their bond as a family. They threw themselves into the recovery efforts, with Sarah organizing educational programs to teach children about emergency preparedness, and Tom using his fishing boat to help clear debris from the harbor. The flood had tested Seaside Cove to its limits, but in facing this challenge, the town had discovered a deeper sense of community and purpose. The process of rebuilding would be long, but they would face it together, stronger and more united than ever before. The emotional aftermath of the flood swept through Seaside Cove like a tide, touching every resident in profound and unexpected ways. For Emily, the experience had transformed her from a carefree child into a young hero, bringing with it a mix of pride and uncertainty. She found herself grappling with newfound attention, her natural shyness at odds with the community's desire to celebrate her bravery and the life-saving properties of her blood. Tom and Sarah watched their daughter's struggles with a bittersweet blend of concern and admiration. They worked to shield Emily from overwhelming attention while helping her understand the significance of her role in the town's survival. Family therapy sessions became a regular part of their routine, providing a safe space for Emily to process her emotions and for her parents to address their own lingering fears and guilt. Max, now hailed as the town's canine hero, seemed to take his new status in stride. His unwavering loyalty to Emily only grew stronger, and he became a constant, comforting presence not just for her, but for many of the town's children who had been traumatized by the flood. The sight of Max's wagging tail and gentle demeanor became a source of healing for many. Chief Sullivan found himself dealing with complex emotions. The weight of the decisions he had made during the crisis, the lives saved and those lost, left an indelible mark on his psyche. He began to open up to his deputies about the pressures of leadership, fostering a more emotionally supportive environment within the emergency services. Dr. Chen, while celebrated for her quick thinking and the development of the life-saving serum, privately grappled with the enormity of what she had faced. The long hours of treating patients under dire circumstances had taken their toll. She found solace in starting a support group for healthcare workers, creating a space where they could share their experiences and emotions without judgment. Mrs. Green experienced a renewed sense of purpose in the wake of the disaster. Her crucial role in saving the town had reignited her passion for local history and geography. She began working on a comprehensive book about Seaside Cove, determined to ensure that the town's past would continue to inform its future. The community as a whole underwent a profound emotional journey. Grief for what was lost mingled with gratitude for what was saved. Neighbors who had once been mere acquaintances now shared a bond forged in crisis. Impromptu gatherings in the town square became a regular occurrence, where people shared stories, offered support, and found strength in their shared experience. As the physical rebuilding of Seaside Cove progressed, so did the emotional healing. The town's annual festival was transformed into a celebration of resilience, featuring art installations made from flood debris, a memorial for those lost, and a special ceremony honoring the heroes, both human and canine. Through it all, a new emotional resilience emerged in Seaside Cove. The flood had washed away old barriers and prejudices, leaving in its wake a community more tightly knit and emotionally aware than ever before. The town had not just survived, it had grown stronger through adversity. 1 year after the Great Flood, Seaside Cove stood as a testament to the power of community and resilience. The town had not only rebuilt, but reimagined itself, emerging stronger and more united than ever before. And still, on the anniversary of the flood, the townspeople gathered for a special commemoration. The event was held in the newly constructed Resilience Park, built on the site where the old drainage tunnels had saved the town. At its center stood a bronze statue of a young girl and her loyal dog, a tribute to Emily and Max's bravery. As Mayor Thompson, formerly Chief Sullivan, who had been elected in a landslide, addressed the crowd, he spoke of the lessons learned and the strength discovered. "We faced nature's fury," he said, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering, "but we found our own inner strength. Today, we don't just remember the disaster, we celebrate our rebirth." Emily, now 8 years old, stood proudly with her parents and Max. The shy girl of a year ago had blossomed into a confident young leader, inspiring her classmates with her courage and compassion. As she petted Max, whose grey muzzle betrayed his advancing years, but whose eyes still shone with loyalty, she realized that their adventure had changed, not just her life, but the entire town's. As the ceremony concluded, the people of Seaside Cove looked to the future with hope and determination. They had weathered the storm together, and whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew they could face them. As one community bound by love, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of Seaside Cove. As the sun set on the anniversary celebration in Seaside Cove, the town's transformation was evident in every corner. The rebuilt homes and businesses now stood stronger, designed to withstand future challenges. The expanded drainage system, a blend of old and new technology, provided a sense of security that allowed the community to thrive. The medical center, under Dr. Chen's leadership, had become a beacon of innovative care, attracting researchers interested in the unique antibodies first discovered in Emily's blood. Mrs. Green's book on Seaside Cove's history had become a bestseller, igniting interest in small-town resilience across the country. Years later, visitors to Seaside Cove would often pause at the Resilience Park, reading the plaque that told the tale of a brave girl, a loyal dog, and a town that refused to be defeated. The story of Seaside Cove served as an inspiration, a reminder that in the face of adversity, the human spirit, bolstered by community and compassion, could overcome any obstacle. Dear viewers, Seaside Cove's story reminds us of the power within each of us to make a difference. Whether it's helping a neighbor, supporting your local community, or preparing for unexpected challenges, your actions matter. We encourage you to share this story, inspire others, and be ready to step up when your community needs you. Together, we can weather any storm.